Hardhat's all about showing up to play hard, doing what it takes to win.
If you want to cement legacy, win another.
He's your third center.
You don't want to pump him up too much, but it's hard not to.
This is maybe the most I've ever agreed with you.
Hey, Bobby Manning here with another practice report. Noah Dalzell alongside, and leadership starting to take shape on the Celtics team. Unsurprisingly, it's Jaylen Brown, Peyton Pritchard, Derek White leading the way alongside Joe Mazzulla. But one thing that stood out from this camp is just how many new faces there are, and guys trying to learn the system, the city, as well as their teammates now. And it's been interesting to hear through the first handful of days here how they're going about that. And I know you wrote about that today over on Celtics Blog.
Yeah, so I have a new story about some of the off-court connections, because one of the things that I think we've taken for granted in the last few years is that you haven't really had to build trust between Al Horford and the guys, you know, that he basically has been there through earlier parts of their career. And even like the two-way players were mostly returned from the year prior. So this is a big year of turnover in really every sense. And there's really only a handful of guys from last year's roster. The two-way players are new. The Exhibit 10 guys are new. There's one carryover from last year's training camp. So with that, I think comes a level of intentionality that the guys have approached this. And Jaylen Brown's talked about it quite a bit, that he's making an effort to have guys over at his apartment and go out to concerts together. And they went to a Patriots game that the Celtics social media team posted last week. And I think that that's a feeling that you get a little bit more now than last year, where it's like most of the guys were fathers, everybody knew each other, everybody was very family oriented, and like they didn't really have to go out and like try to cultivate those friendships as much. And I think you are seeing a concerted effort, both from the players, and it's something obviously Jaylen Brown and Derek White have really led, but I think Joe Mazzulla as well, taking the time to get to know individual guys and like form those off-court connections, because it's a lot of new faces for him and a lot of new guys that have to have buy-in.
Yeah, and that's the off-court aspect. To me, the on-court one's interesting too, and we mentioned in our takeaways video. This year and this camp hasn't been about Jaylen proving that he can be a number one guy, Derek taking a leap, Pritchard becoming a starter and emerging as one of the stars of the league. I thought that would be the case, and I thought there'd be more excitement and embracing of that from those guys than there has been here. And it's actually an encouraging thing to hear that they're trying to make this more about those teammates and new guys that are coming in and setting up young guys and whatever that might be. We'll see how it actually plays out when the games start and those guys get on the court, but is Jaylen actually going to be focusing on defense rather than offense this year? Is Peyton going to come off the bench? Is Derek just going to try to be consistent rather than trying to do more? Those are huge storylines to me if that's going to be the case.
Yeah, and I think there's a reality of like also what's smart to say. Like, no, they're saying all the right things, and I'm seeing quotes coming out of different camps where guys are like, "What's your goal?" I think it was Norman Powell that was asked like, "What's your goal for the year?" And he was like, "To be an all-star." That's very different than what we're hearing here at Celtics camp, but it doesn't mean that guys don't have their goal of being an all-star deep inside, and they're just kind of knowing that that's not the right thing to say. But that's certainly been the messaging. So I've gotten in the sense that they're trying to like kind of reestablish this culture, and obviously a lot of it is carried over. The coaching staff is exactly the same from years prior. You have the banners, you have the Celtics like allure that it never goes away regardless of who's on the roster. But there seems to be a really high level of buy-in, and I had a long conversation with Chris Boucher today. I'll have a story on that coming soon, but like he really went into that piece as well, that there's a tremendous level of mutual respect right now between the players and Joe Mazzulla. And he's now like a veteran coach that's won a championship, that's probably one of the most famous coaches in the league, most intriguing to people. And so he's in a very different spot as well than he was 3-4 years ago when he was taking over this team and was relatively unknown. And I think there's a kind of immediate buy-in from a lot of the new guys.
That's a good point, because I didn't know how it was going to go with new guys. He was an assistant coach for a lot of the veterans. He was certainly on Ime's staff for some of the players who are here now. And this is the first time where he's getting an entirely new group. Are they going to react well to some of the weird stuff, playing smack ball, whatever they were the other day? Spike ball. I didn't know how that was going to go, and especially didn't know how it was going to go with a guy like Simons, who if he's going to pressure and call out for the defense and maybe bring off the bench, how would that go? And to hear guys reacting positively to Joe so far, I think is a good thing. Because I've said all along through some of the ups and downs I've had with how I feel about his coaching, the one thing you could say the whole way through is that he had buy-in from the team. And that's more important than anything else.
Right, I always say that's really the only thing we can gauge. Like, a lot of the other stuff, it's really hard to tell, but you can get a sense of where the players feel. I mean, Josh Minot and Luka Garza both, literally in their first week, kind of unprompted, said they had run through a brick wall for Joe Mazzulla. Like, they both said that in separate interviews. I think the guys view it as a compliment when he's on them, because it's like he cares. You know, he's still he views them as like an important, integral part of this team. So that's been interesting to track, is with all the new faces, there's a level of buy-in and there's a level of connection that does seem really authentic. And obviously it's like, that's what you want to say and that's what you want to message. But I got into it a little bit in my story, but like they're trying to build a family. Jordan Walsh said that, Baylor Scheinman said, we've been here all summer. That was not the case last summer when they were fresh off a title and 3 guys went to the Olympic team.
That should help too.
It's been a little bit different. So everybody's been in the building pretty much throughout. A couple guys were a little bit later arrivals. Derek White was in Colorado most of the year. Xavier Tillman was in Michigan, but a lot of the guys have really just been in Boston. And so it's day one, this is week 1 for us, but it's like week 13 for the Celtics.
Yep, and training camp continues on Saturday. We'll be back here with more coverage of camp and players getting started, as well as the preseason opener coming up next Wednesday. So subscribe to CLNS Media, Celtics All Access. Check out our other video on our biggest takeaways from camp so far. And for Noah Dalzell, I'm Bobby Manning here with a practice report from the Auerbach Center.